The Venetian Black Nobility. From the New Swabenland Times. Posted at IlluminatiNews.com Jan. 23, 2004 by Wes Penner. These people earned the title of Black Nobility from their ruthless lack of scruple. They employed murder, rape, kidnapping, assassination, robbery, and all manner of deceit on a grand scale, brooking no opposition to attaining their objectives. These all have immense wealth. And money is power. The most powerful of the black nobility families are located in Italy, Germany, Switzerland, Britain, Poland and Greece in that order. The roots may be traced back to the Venetian oligarchs, who are of Khazar extraction, and married into these royal houses in the early part of the 12th century. Following a great Khazar victory over the Arabs, the future emperor, Constantine V, married a Khazar princess and their son became Emperor Leo IV, also known as Leo the Khazar. The Medici popes, Pius XII, Eugenio Pacelli, and John Paul II were Khazars. Not all black nobility are royal houses, and many of their royal families no longer have kingdoms. According to researcher and author Dr. John Coleman, a committee of 300 was established early in the 18th century, although it did not take on its present form until around 1897, when the China opium trade was legalized. Documentary proof as to the existence of the Committee of 300 is not forthcoming, and it may be no more than a convenient phrase to describe certain key players. Socialist politician and financial advisor to the Rothschilds, Walter Rathenow, writing in the Wiener Press, 24th of December, 1921, said, "Only 300 men, each of whom knows all others govern the fate of Europe. They select their successors from their own entourage. These men have the means in their hands of putting an end to the form of state which they find unreasonable." Exactly 6 months after publication, Rathenow was assassinated. Dr. Coleman's work opens the door to further studies on named members of the ruling elite, particularly in America. Whereas the English have a long history and are very aware of their ancestry, certain families of blue bloods in the United States that have historic ties with the British through blood and money. These noble families are behind most if not all of the so-called pro-environmental movements that are actually intended to curb the population growth of all nations. Prince Philip and Prince Charles are the most visible symbols of this movement, and are a true part of this conspiracy to destroy industry and take the world back to a new dark age. Most if not all the crowned and uncrowned heads of these dynasties enjoy huge incomes from ground rents. All favor Global 2000 report to the president that is calculated to end all industrial progress, and by famine, disease and wars, eliminate the excess population industry supports. All oppose nuclear power that can produce clean cheap electricity, the key to economic development and prosperity in the third world. They ardently desire a return to the feudal system where they will once again be absolute rulers. While professing Christianity, the oligarchical families, for the greater part, actually despise it in secret. Masonry provides their religious fulfillment. And without faith, they have no belief in reward or punishment and a world to come. They live for the here and now. Many of these oligarchies are in the drug and arms trade through well-distanced intermediaries, like so many of the large banks. In 1815 the Jesuits and their Freemason allies among the crowned heads of Europe held the Congress of Vienna, whereby Swiss neutrality, already sanctioned by the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, was forever guaranteed, and no matter how many wars are provoked in which the common man has to do the fighting, the money of the nobility in Switzerland should always be free from plunder. It is part of Rothschild's meticulous long-range planning, and why Switzerland exists to this day. But that doesn't mean to say your money would be safe. Some $280 billion PA in flight capital and drug money flows into the Swiss accounts of the black nobility. The place of Freemasonry in the power structure of the elites is quite evident, as they carried through Adam Weishaupt's conspiracy to avenge the Jesuits after their abolition in 1773 by short-lived Pope Clement XIV as immoral and a menace to the Church and the faith. By launching the French Revolution and directing Napoleon's conquest of Catholic Europe, and by revolts against the Church in Mexico and Latin America, they cut off Vatican income. Nathan Rothschild's financing of Britain resulted in the defeat of Rome's enemy Napoleon, as well as being the source of his wealth and influence. Since Gregory XVI conferred a papal decoration on Cullman Rothschild for loaning the Vatican £5 million in a period of difficulty, the Rothschilds have been the fiscal agents of the Vatican. With Vatican interests at heart, the Rothschilds extended their financial and political dominion in the United States. The Vatican's interest in the U.S. was clearly revealed in the secret 1822 Treaty of Verona between Austria, France, Prussia, and Russia, whereby the Jesuit order pledged itself as the price of reinstatement to destroy the works of Satan it had established in setting up, by revolution, representative governments such as the republics and democracies of France and the USA, replacing them with the only form of government approved by the Church, ruled by divine right, as declared by the Vatican, Daniel 2:40-43, Revelation 17:12-13. As Senator Robert Owen pointed out to the U.S. Senate in 1916, the prime target to which the Vatican and the Holy Alliance directed the subversive and destructive activities of the Society of Jesus, is the United States, and other republics in the Western Hemisphere. This plot, he claimed, was the target at which the Monroe Doctrine was directed. What the senator did not realize is that the Monroe Doctrine protects the interests of the City of London. The Rothschild-Vatican cabal unsuccessfully attempted to gain control over the power of the purse in the U.S. through the First and Second Bank of the United States. They were established under emergency powers granted to the President by the Constitution, as temporary institutions to tide the country through the periods of financial stress occasioned by the Revolutionary and 1812 wars. But the aims of the conspirators to establish a banking monopoly were thwarted by the Constitution. Until the Fed. It is said the black nobility promised a neutral Germany if Soviet Russia allowed East and West Germany to reunite. And that Russia promised to see that all royal houses are restored to the rightful heirs if they decouple Europe from the American alliance. Imperial nobility enjoy a more elevated status than the nobilities of the German successor states and, indeed, of the Italian states. The descendants of Italian Holy Roman Empire titles have formed an association to which all male-line descendants of someone ennobled by imperial patent is entitled to belong. And the Principality of Liechtenstein has also claimed the ability to confirm a succession to imperial titles, and has confirmed the right of a Spanish nobleman to heir such a title for purposes of the Spanish law requiring the successor state to confirm that the claimant to a particular title is in fact the heir. Thus there is a remaining jurisdiction, even though no imperial titles have been conferred since 1806. In 1963, the Holy Roman Empire Association, Associazione e Nobili del Sacro Romano Impero, was established to unite male descendants in its membership who are invested with nobility of the Holy Roman Empire. It also includes a number of honorary members. The black nobility belong to the Committee of 300 that controls the UN. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands has the power to veto the Vatican's choice of any pope it selects. This may explain the untimely end to Pope John Paul I's 33-day pontificate. The prince has veto power because his family, the Habsburgs, are descended directly from the last Roman emperor. The Habsburg Frederick III was the last emperor to be crowned in Rome. His great-grandson Charles V was the last to be crowned by a pope. This is the civil equivalent of the Pope's claimed apostolic succession from St. Peter. Prince Bernhard is leader of the Black families, and he also claims descent from the House of David through the Merovingian dynasty, a claim that was acknowledged to be valid by the Carolingian dynasty that supplanted them, by other monarchs and by the Roman Church of that time. Thus he can truly say that he is related to Jesus. Prince Bernhard's House of Orange had its origins in France. The Habsburgs are related through marriage with the Merovingians, who are said to have descended from the tribe of Benjamin, who went into exile following war with the other 11 tribes. See Judges chapter 21. Exile took them to Arcadia and the central Peloponnese, Greece. Here they aligned with the Arcadian royal line, and towards the advent of the Christian era, migrated up the Danube and Rhine, through marriage engendering the Sucabrian Franks, the immediate forebears of the Merovingians, who were ultimately of Semitic origin, and descendants of King Saul. They are identified with the Spartans, and both books of Maccabees link the Spartans with the Jews. I Maccabees 12 tells of Jonathan sending a letter to the Lacedaemonians, Spartan Greeks, asking for their help, since they were brethren. The Spartans replied, "It is found in writing, that the Lacedaemonians and Jews are brethren, and that they are of the stock of Abraham," verse 21. It is assumed by some writers that this means the Spartans were Israelites, but the Spartans were not Israelites, they were Edomites, descended from Bela son of Beor and brother of Balaam, and king of Edom. Genesis 36:32, I Chronicles 1:43. Edom was the son of Isaac and grandson of Abraham, who sold his birthright, and bred his posterity off the book of life. Early in the 5th century the Merovingians established themselves in what is now Belgium and northern France. There they adopted the Kabbalistic pseudo-Christianity of the Cathars, a dualistic religion that holds there are two eternal gods, the God of good and the God of evil. It is revealing that this Luciferian belief is held by Masons of high degree and those who would be masters of this world today, and who claim that Lucifer will ultimately be victorious. Under Clovis I, who reigned from 481–511, the Franks converted to Roman Catholicism. Through him, Rome began to establish undisputed supremacy in Western Europe. In return for being the sword of Rome whereby the Church would manifest her power and impose a spiritual dominion, Clovis was granted the title of New Constantine and to preside over a unified Holy Roman Empire based on the Church and administered on the secular level in perpetuity by the Merovingian bloodline. Like the sure mercies of David, this was a pact that could be modified, but not revoked, broken or betrayed. When in 496 the Church pledged itself in perpetuity to the Merovingian bloodline, it was presumably in full knowledge of their claimed identity. This would explain why Clovis was offered the status of Holy Roman Emperor, and why he was not created but only crowned king. In 754 the Church clandestinely betrayed its pact. The Paradisian is the name of the secret order which created the Knight Templars as its military and administrative arm. It should be remembered that the Knight Templars were the forerunners of Freemasonry. The Paradisian continues to function through the centuries, acting in the shadows, and has orchestrated certain critical events in Western history. It exists today and is still operative. Its declared objective is the restoration of the Merovingian dynasty and bloodline to the throne not only of France, but of other European nations as well, a restoration that is sanctioned and justifiable, both legally and morally. There is strong evidence to suggest that this order was the author of Freemasonry, and the protocols of the learned elders of Sion, as well as the Rosicrucians. There is abundant evidence to suggest that Nostradamus was one of their secret agents, and there is no question that numerous quatrains which refer to the advent of Le Grand Monarch indicate that this sovereign will ultimately derive from the Merovingian dynasty, implying a double hegemony of the papacy and the empire, of the Vatican and of the Habsburgs. He frequently referred quite explicitly to the Knights Templars and to the House of Lorraine, which is now synonymous with the Habsburgs. Although deposed in the 8th century, the Merovingian bloodline did not become extinct. On the contrary, it perpetuated itself in a direct line from Dagobert II and his son Sigisbert IV. By dint of dynastic alliances and intermarriages, this line came to include Godefroy de Bouillon, who captured Jerusalem in 1099, and various other noble and royal families, past and present: Blanchefort, Gysers, St. Clair, Sinclair in England, Montesquieu, Montpezat, Poher, Louis-Ignan, Plandert and Habsburg-Lorraine. At present, the Merovingian bloodline enjoys a legitimate claim to its heritage. The crown of Charlemagne, a replica of which is now part of the imperial Habsburg regalia, is said to have borne the inscription Rex Salomon, Encyclopaedia Britannica, 14th ed., 1972, Crown and Regalia, Figure 2. And the Spear of Destiny, which is said to have pierced Christ, reside today in the Treasure House, Vienna, awaiting another Holy Roman Emperor, the Rigby Joy of Knowledge Library. History and Culture I, 1977-160, The Holy Roman Empire, Friedrich here, p. 284. It is clear why the protocols of the Elders of Science speak of a new king of the Holy Seed of David, Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, Agent, Leon Lincoln. Otto von Habsburg is today the titular Duke of Lorraine and King of Jerusalem. The Paradisian claimed to hold the lost treasure of the Temple of Jerusalem plundered by Titus in AD 70, which would be returned to Israel when the time was right. This might explain why Rome must defer to the kings of the earth and how she will seal a covenant with the Jews who have long hidden behind the shield of baptism. Prince Bernhard is in fact related to the Khazars, and therefore a Gentile. Revelation 2-9, I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty, but you are rich, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews, and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Assisted by the CIA, Prince Bernhard has brought the hidden ruling body of the Illuminati into public knowledge as the Bilderberg Group. Established in 1954, its headquarters is Wansmidswater, Den Haag, Netherlands. At the heart of the Bilderberg Group are 39 members of the Illuminati chosen from 3 committees drawn from the members of all the secret groups that comprise the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the Vatican and the Black Nobility. This committee works year-round in offices in Switzerland. The Committee of 300 now call themselves World Government Founders for the NWO. A reference no doubt to their hereditary claim to the divine right of kings. It is imperative that we realize that privately, the black nobility refuse to ever recognize any government other than their own inherited and divine right to rule. They believe the United States still belongs to England, and work diligently behind the scenes to cause conditions whereby they might regain their grounds. Every royal and so-called noble dynasty past and present of Europe have seats on the Committee of 300, most often by nominees. There are just too many of these royal families for them each to have representatives on the Committee of 300. Precedence is determined by rank, first royal family members, then dukes, earls, marquises and lords, then finally commoners, who usually get the title of Sir. Conspiratoress hierarchy, the Committee of 300, Dr. John Coleman. Tilda. History of the Black Nobility. From bibliotecapoliods.net. In Carthage, the Canaanites called themselves Punics. Rome attacked Carthage in full force, beginning in 264 BC and completed their task after killing or enslaving every Carthaginian, by sowing the land to salt so that nothing could ever grow there again. The Edomites descended from Esau, later intermarried with the Turks to produce a Turco-Edomite mixture which later became known as Khazars, who are the present occupants of Israel. These Canaanites eventually adopted the name Sepharvaim for deceptive purposes. They later became known as Venetians, and by marrying into European royalty and aristocracy, the black nobility. The Venetians today control the Federal Reserve System in the U.S. Around AD 1400, European power centers coalesced onto 2 camps, the Ghibellines, who supported the Emperor's Hohenstaufen family, and the Guelphs, the Welfs, from Welf, the German prince who competed with Frederick for control of the Holy Roman Empire. The Pope allied himself with the Guelphs. All modern history stems directly from the struggle between these two powers. The Guelphs are also called Veneri, Black Guelphs, or Black Nobility, and supported William of Orange in his seizure of the throne of England, which eventually resulted in the formation of the Bank of England and the East India Company, which would rule the world from the 17th century. All coups d'états, revolutions and wars in the 19th and 20th centuries are centered in the battle of the Guelphs to hold and enhance their power, which is now the New World Order. The power of the Guelphs would extend through the Italian financial centers to the north of France and Lombardy. All Italian bankers were referred to as Lombards. Lombard in German means deposit bank, and the Lombards were bankers to the entire medieval world. They would later transfer operations north to Hamburg, then to Amsterdam and finally to London. The Guelphs would start the slave trade to the colonies. The Guelphs, in order to aid their control of finance and politics, would perpetuate Gnostic cults which eventually developed into the Rosicrucians, Unitarians, Fabian Society and the World Council of Churches. The East India Company, together with John Stuart Mill, would finance the University of London. A friend of Mill, historian George Grote, a founder of London University, donated L6,000 for the study of mental health, which began the worldwide mental health movement. Banks large and small in the thousands are in the Committee of 300 network, including Banco Commerciale d'Italia, Banco Privata, Banco Ambrosiano, the Netherlands Bank, Barclays Bank, Banco de Colombia, Banco de Iberoamerica. Of special interest is Banca della Svizzera Italiana, BSI, since it handles flight capital investments to and from the United States primarily in dollars and U.S. bonds. Located and isolated in neutral Lugano, the flight capital center for the Venetian black nobility. Lugano was not in Italy or in Switzerland, and is a kind of twilight zone for shady flight capital operations. George Ball, who owns a large block of stock in BSI, is a prominent insider and the bank's U.S. representative. In the secret 1822 Treaty of Verona, between Austria, France, Prussia and Russia, the Jesuits agreed to smash the U.S. Constitution and suppress the freedom of the U.S. Their methods included destroying free speech, destroying and suppressing the press, universal censorship, sustaining the cooperation of the Pope and clergy to use religion to help keep nations in passive obedience, and financing wars against countries with representative governments. The monarchs who signed this treaty were ultimately deposed. Most of these families are very wealthy and may be more powerful today than when they sat upon thrones. They are known collectively as the black nobility. Privately, these families refuse to recognize any right to rule except their own. The fact that this treaty was made long ago does not mean it is void. The treaty was placed in the Congressional Record on April 25, 1916 by Senator Owen. In 1948, George H. W. Bush graduated from Yale University in the Skull and Bones. He is a distant cousin of the Queen of England, part of the black nobility which traces its power back 5,000 years. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands created a group that became known as the Bilderbergers. Many conservative researchers have come to recognize the Bilderbergers as an important force for the New World Order. Note, since the Bilderbergers, according to former British intelligence agent John Coleman, serve as a binding force between the three major one-world government forces: the Wicca Masons, that is communism, the black nobility descendants of the early Roman emperors, and the Maltese Jesuits, each of which have 13 respective representatives on the 39-member Bilderberger board. And since a Nazi SS stormtrooper was responsible for developing this New World Order Coordination Council, and since Adolf Hitler's second book was titled, Believe It or Not, The New World Order. No wonder Adolf Hitler's dream and that of his predecessors the Kaisers, a German translation of Caesars, was the revival of the Roman Empire. According to former British intelligence agent Dr. John Coleman, the three world power groups, the Wicca Masons, that is communism, the Maltese Jesuits and the black nobility, black in this context refers to their character, not their skin color, all work for and under the central command of the Bavarian Illuminati which bonds them together. The Bavarians created the Bilderberg Society for this purpose, the core of which is a council of 13 members from each of the three groups, or 39 in all. The old-line ruling families believe that they have the right to rule the world because they are descended from the emperors of the ancient Roman Empire, and/or the emperors of the so-called Holy Roman Empire descended from the Merovingian dynasty, consist of 13-15 blue blood families. Prominent on the board of two insurance giants are a committee of 300 members. The Justiniani family, black nobility of Roman Venice who trace their lineage to the Emperor Justinian. Sir Jocelyn Hambro of Hambros, merchant, bank. Pierpillo Lazzani Fiquez, whose lineage dates back 6 centuries to the most ancient Lazzatos, the black nobility of Venice. Umberto Ortolani of the ancient black nobility family of the same name. Other Old Venetian black nobility committee of 300 members and board members of ASG and RASAR. The Doria family, the financiers of the Spanish Habsburgs. Elie de Rothschild of the French Rothschild family. Baron August von Fink, the second richest man in Germany now deceased. Franco Orsini Bonacassi of the ancient Orsini black nobility that traces its lineage to an ancient Roman senator of the same name. The Alba family whose lineage dates back to the great Duke of Alba. Baron Pierre Lambert, a cousin of the Belgian Rothschild family. Italy was chosen as a test target by the Committee of 300. Italy is important to the conspirators' plans because it is the closest European country to the Middle East, and linked to Middle East economics and politics. It is also the home of the Catholic Church, which Wycliffe ordered destroyed, and home for some of Europe's most powerful oligarchical families of the ancient black nobility. Should Italy have been weakened by Aldo Moro's death, it would have had repercussions in the Middle East which would have weakened U.S. influence in the region. Italy is important for another reason: it is a gateway for drugs entering Europe from Iran and Lebanon. Various groups combined under the name of socialism to bring about the downfall of several Italian governments since the Club of Rome was established in 1968. Among these are the black nobility of Venice and Genoa, Brito Masonry and the Red Brigades, all working for the same goals. Police investigators in Rome working on the Red Brigade's Aldo Moro case came across the names of several very prominent Italian families working closely with this terrorist group. The police also discovered evidence that in at least a dozen cases, these powerful and prominent families had allowed their homes and/or property to be used as safe houses for Red Brigade cells. Bexai headed the Atlantic Institute's Economic Council for 3 decades while he was the chief executive officer for Giovanni Agnelli's Fiat Motor Company. Agnelli, a member of an ancient Italian black nobility family of the same name, was one of the most important members of the Committee of 300. He played a leading role in development projects in the Soviet Union. The Club of Rome is a conspiratorial umbrella organization, a marriage between Anglo-American financiers and the old black nobility families of Europe, particularly the so-called nobility of London, Venice, and Genoa. The list of the Anglo-American financiers consists of the following families: Rothschild, Kuhn, Loeb, Lehman, Rockefeller, Sachs, Warburg, Lazard, Seif, Goldman, Schiff, Morgan, Schroeder, Bush, Harriman, Others that have not been mentioned are more powerful than others. These names will get you started if you wish to track down the present-day inner core of the conspiracy. The history of the Bilderberg Group itself, a cover for the Bavarian Illuminati, and its Nazi connections, would probably be the best place to start. The key to the successful control of the world is their ability to create and manage savage economic recessions and eventual depressions. The Committee of 300 looks to social convulsions on a global scale, followed by depressions, as a softening up technique for bigger things to come, as its principal method of creating masses of people all over the world who will become its welfare recipients of the future. To introduce new cults and continue to boost those already functioning, which includes rock music gangsters such as the filthy, degenerate Mick Jagger's Rolling Stones, a gangster group much favored by European black nobility, and all of the Tavistock-created rock groups which began with the Beatles. To continue to build up the cult of Christian fundamentalism begun by the British East India Company's servant, Darby, which will be misused to strengthen the Zionist state of Israel through identifying with the Jews through the myth of God's chosen people and by donating very substantial amounts of money to what they mistakenly believe is a religious cause in the furtherance of Christianity. Brzezinski was not writing as a private citizen but as Carter's national security advisor and a leading member of the Club of Rome and a member of the Committee of 300, a member of the CFR and as a member of the old Polish black nobility. His book explains how America must leave its industrial base behind and enter into what he called a distinct new historical era. In this regard, a French black nobility member, Etienne d'Avignon, as a member of the Committee of 300, was assigned the task of collapsing the steel industry in the U.S. It is doubtful that any of the hundreds of thousands of steel workers and shipyard workers who have been without jobs for the past decade have ever heard of d'Avignon. A second assassination bureau is located in Switzerland and was until recently run by a shadowy figure of whom no photographs existed after 1941. The operations were and probably still are financed by the Outremer family, Swiss black nobility, owners of the Lombard-Odier Bank of Geneva, a Committee of 300 operation. The primary contact man was Jacques Still, this according to U.S. Army G2 intelligence files. This group was also closely allied with Alan Dulles and Jean de Menil, an important member of the Committee of 300 and a very prominent name in the oil industry in Texas. Army G2 records show that the group was heavily involved in the arms trade in the Middle East, but more than that, the Assassination Bureau made no less than 30 attempts to kill General de Gaulle, in which Jacques Still was directly involved. The same Still was the contact man for the Sendero Luminoso Shining Pathway guerrilla group protecting the Committee's Peruvian cocaine producers. Richard Gardner was sent to Rome on a special assignment. Gardner married into one of the oldest black nobility families of the Venice, thus providing the Venetian aristocracy a direct line to the White House. The late Ariel Harriman was another of the Committee's direct links with the Kremlin and the White House, a position inherited by Kissinger after Harriman's death. In 1986 in the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, Dr. Coleman wrote, "It is therefore not a secret society, except where its purposes have been perverted in the inner councils like the Order of the Garter, which is a prostituted oligarchical creation of the British royal family, which makes a mockery of what the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem stands for." As an example, we find the atheist Lord Peter Carrington, who pretends to be an Anglican Christian but who is a member of the Order of Osiris and other demonic sects, including Freemasonry, installed as a Knight of the Garter at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle, by Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II of England, of the black nobility Guelphs, also head of the Anglican Church, which she thoroughly despises. $15.8 billion is one realistic estimate of the Queen's worth tax-exempt BOE. only the little people pay taxes. Leona Helmsley. Tilda. The Committee of 300. A Brief History of World Power. The Venetian Black Nobility. Roots of Today's Ruling Oligarchy by Dr. John Coleman. 300 men, all of whom know one another, direct the economic destiny of Europe and choose their successors from among themselves. Walter Rathenow, 1909, founder of the mammoth German General Electric Corporation. The Committee of 300 is a product of the British East India Company's Council of 300. The East India Company was chartered by the British royal family in 1600. It made vast fortunes in the opium drug trade with China and became the largest company on earth in its time. Today, through many powerful alliances, the Committee of 300 rules the world and is the driving force behind the criminal agenda to create a new world order, under a totalitarian global government. There is no need to use they or the enemy except the shorthand. We know who they, the enemy, is. The Committee of 300 with its aristocracy, its ownership of the U.S. Federal Reserve banking system, insurance companies, giant corporations, foundations, communications networks, presided over by a hierarchy of conspirators. This is the enemy. Secret societies exist by deception. Each is a hierarchy with an inner circle at the top, who deceives those below with lies, such as claiming a noble agenda, thus, duping them into following a web of compartmentalized complicity. The inner circle of the Committee of 300 is the Order of the Garter, headed by Queen Elizabeth Windsor II. It is interesting to note that the Windsors changed their name from the Germanic Saxe-Coburg-Gotha during World War I, because of anti-German sentiment. The enemy is clearly identifiable as the Committee of 300 and its front organizations, such as the Royal Institute for International Affairs, Chatham House, the Club of Rome, NATO, UN, the Black Nobility, the Tavistock Institute, CFR and all its affiliated organizations, the think tanks and research institutions controlled by Stanford and the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, and last, but certainly not least, the military establishment. The Committee of 300 is the ultimate secret society made up of an untouchable ruling class, which includes the Queen of the United Kingdom, Elizabeth II, the Queen of the Netherlands, the Queen of Denmark and the royal families of Europe. These aristocrats decided at the death of Queen Victoria, the matriarch of the Venetian Black Elves, that, in order to gain worldwide control, it would be necessary for its aristocratic members to go into business with the non-aristocratic but extremely powerful leaders of corporate business on a global scale. And so the doors to ultimate power were opened to what the Queen of England likes to refer to as the commoners. Through their illicit banking cartel, they owned the stock of the Federal Reserve, which is a private for-profit corporation that violates U.S. Constitution and is a root of the problem. The decadent American families of the unholy partnership, thoroughly corrupted and wallowing in tainted opium money, went on to become what we know today as the Eastern Liberal Establishment. Its members, under the careful guidance and direction of the British Crown, and subsequently, its foreign policy executive arm, the Royal Institute for International Affairs, RIIA, now known as Chatham House, located in England, across St. James's Square from the Asters, ran the United States from top to bottom through their secret upper-level, parallel government, which is tightly meshed with the Committee of 300, the ultimate secret society. That secret, all-powerful government is more in control of the United States in 2006 than ever before. Some notable members of the Committee of 300 include, the British royal family, Dutch royal family, House of Habsburg, House of Orange, Duke of Alba, Prince Philip Duke of Edinburgh, Lord Carrington, Lord Halifax, Lord Alfred Milner, John Jacob and Waldorf of the Astor Illuminati bloodline, Winston Churchill, Cecil Rhodes, Queen Elizabeth II, Queen Juliana, Queen Beatrix, Queen Greta, King Haakon of Norway, Colonel Mandel House, Aldous Huxley, John Forbes, Averill Harriman, William and McGeorge Bundy, George Bush, Prescott Bush, Henry Kissinger, J.P. Morgan, Morris Strong, David Rockefeller, David and Evelyn Rothschild, Paul, Max, and Felix Warburg, Ormsby and Al Gore, Bertrand Russell, Sir Ernest and Harry of the Oppenheimer Illuminati bloodline, Warren Buffett, Giuseppe Mazzini, Sir William Hess, George Shultz, H.G. Wells, and Ted Turner. In the Committee of 300, which has a 150-year history, we have some of the most brilliant intellects assembled to form a completely totalitarian, absolutely controlled new society, only it isn't new, having drawn most of its ideas from the clubs of cultus diabolicus. It strives toward a one-world government rather well described by one of its late members, H. G. Wells, in his work commissioned by the committee which Wells boldly called, The Open Conspiracy, Blueprints for a World Revolution. Most of the Committee of 300's immense wealth arose out of the opium trade with China and India. Obscene profits went straight into the royal coffers, and into the pockets of the nobility, the oligarchs and plutocrats, and made them billionaires. The ordinary people of China, India, and England profited nothing from opium revenues. In the same way the people of South Africa, black and white, never profited from the gold mining industry, whose revenues were piped directly into the City of London banks and merchant banks. The Committee of 300 is responsible for the phony drug wars here in the U.S. These phony drug wars were to get us to give away our constitutional rights. Asset forfeiture is a prime example, where huge assets can be seized without trail and no proof of guilt needed. Also the Committee of 300 long ago decreed that there should be a smaller, much smaller and better world, that is, their idea of what constitutes a better world. The myriads of useless eaters consuming scarce natural resources were to be culled by up to 99%. Industrial progress supports population growth. Therefore the command to multiply and subdue the earth found in Genesis had to be subverted. This called for an attack upon Christianity, the slow but sure disintegration of industrial nation-states, that destruction of billions of people, referred to by the Committee of 300 as surplus population, and the removal of any leader who dared to stand in the way of the Committee's global planning to reach the foregoing objectives. Not that the U.S. government didn't know, but as it was part of the conspiracy, it helped to keep the lid on information rather than let the truth be known. Queen Elizabeth II is the head of the Committee of 300. The Committee of 300 looks to social convulsions on a global scale, followed by depressions, as a softening up technique for bigger things to come, as its principal method of creating masses of people all over the world who will become its welfare recipients of the future. The current criminal agenda of the Committee of 300 is further evidenced by recently leaked Club of Rome documents, as they describe how they will use drugs to help stifle resistance to their New World Order scheme, having been failed by Christianity, and with unemployment rife on every hand. Those who have been without jobs for 5 years or more, will turn away from the church and seek solace in drugs. By then, full control of the drug trade must be completed in order that the government of all countries who are under our jurisdiction have a monopoly in place which we will control by controlling supplies reaching the market. Drug bars will take care of the unruly and the discontented. Would-be revolutionaries will be turned into harmless addicts with no will of their own. The crowned cobras of Europe and their Eastern liberal establishment families will not tolerate any true war against drugs. The war on drugs, which the Bush administration was allegedly fighting, was for the legalization of all types and classes of drugs. Such drugs are not solely a social aberration, but a full-scale attempt to gain control of the minds of the people of the United States. At present, this is a principal task of the Committee of 300. Nothing has changed in the opium, heroin, cocaine trade. It is still in the hands of the same upper-class families in Britain and the United States. It is still a fabulously profitable trade where what appear to be big losses through sometimes seizures of drug shipments are actually small interlopers trying to break into the preserves of the drug trade hierarchy, who sit in paneled boardrooms in New York, Hong Kong and London over Portland cigars and congratulate another success in the eradication of competitors' thought. Included in the Committee of 300 membership are the old families of the European black nobility, the American Eastern liberal establishment, in Freemason hierarchy and the Order of Skull and Bones, the Illuminati, or as it is known by the Committee Moriah Conquering Wind, the Mama Group, the National and World Council of Churches, the Circle of Initiates, the Nine Unknown Men, Luce's Trust, Jesuit Liberation Theologists, the Order of the Elders of Zion, the Nazi Princes, International Monetary Fund, IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, BIS, the United Nations, UN, the Central, British Quattrocoronati, Italian P2 Masonry, especially those in the Vatican hierarchy, the Central Intelligence Agency, Tavistock Institute, selected personnel, various members of leading foundations and insurance companies, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, the Milner Group Roundtable, Cheney Foundation, German Marshall Fund, Ditchley Foundation, NATO, Club of Rome, environmentalists, the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, One World Government Church, Socialist International, Black Order, Thule Society, Anandharbi Rosicrucianists, the Great Superior Ones and literally hundreds of other organizations. In the case of John F. Kennedy, the assassination was carried out with great attendant publicity and with the utmost brutality to serve as a warning to world leaders not to get out of line. Pope John Paul I was quietly murdered because he was getting close to the Committee of 300 through Freemasons in the Vatican hierarchy. His successor, Pope John Paul II, was publicly humiliated as a warning to cease and desist, which he has done. As we shall see, certain Vatican leaders are today seated on the Committee of 300. The Committee of 300 appears to base much of its important decisions affecting mankind on the philosophy of Polish aristocrat, Felix Dzerzhinsky, who regarded mankind as being slightly above the level of cattle. As a close friend of British intelligence agent Sidney Riley, Riley was actually Dzerzhinsky's controller during the Bolshevik Revolution's formative years. He often confided in Riley during his drinking bouts. Dzerzhinsky was, of course, the beast who ran the Red Terror apparatus. He once told Riley, while the two were on a drinking binge, "That man is of no importance. Look at what happens when you starve him. He begins to eat his dead companions to stay alive. Man is only interested in his own survival. That is all that counts. All the Spinoza stuff is a lot of rubbish." The roots of the East India Company, chartered by Queen Elizabeth I on December 31, 1600 and dissolved in 1873, sprout from the European black nobility. The black nobility are the oligarchic families of the Venice and Genoa, who in the 12th century held the privileged trading rights, monopolies. The first of three crusades, from 1063 to 1123, established the power of the Venetian black nobility and solidified the power of the wealthy ruling class. The black nobility aristocracy achieved complete control over Venice in 1171, when the appointment of the Doge was transferred to what was known as the Great Council, which consisted of members of the commercial aristocracy, a complete triumph for them. Venice has remained in their hands ever since, but the power and influence of the Venetian black nobility extends far beyond its borders, and today, is felt in every corner of the globe. In 1204 the oligarchic families parceled out feudal enclaves to their members, and from this epoch dates the great building up of power and pressure until the government became a closed corporation of the leading black nobility families. It is important to note that the European black nobility is responsible for the insidious entanglements of numerous secret societies, lodges, and organizations, which are backed with high finance and powerful political connections. Such organizations include Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group, German version of CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, United Nations, founded by CFR, Illuminati Order Skull and Bones, Inner Circle of the CFR, International Monetary Fund, IMF, World Bank, Bank of International Settlement, Club of Rome, Chatham House, formerly the Royal Institute of International Affairs RIA, Round Table, Tavistock Institute for Human Studies, England's Psychological Warfare Think Tank, Associated Press, Reuters, Rothschild on News monopoly used for brainwashing the masses, and many others, all of which, whether they are dupes or adapts, work in favor of Great Britain's aristocracy and their one-world government agenda. Although there is a wide cross-section, all roads lead to the Queen of England. The technique for keeping their illicit schemes secret is compartmentalization. Only the people in the inner circle, who are part of the capstone at the top of the pyramid, know the entire extent of the fraud. Adepts are few and dupes many. Typically, the dupes are told lies that their involvement is benevolent, thus, they become unwitting accomplices in crime. This is why it is imperative to expose this diabolical ring of power. Illicit secret societies cannot withstand the light of day. Once exposed, the cabal and their minions will fall like a house of cards. The European black nobility earned its title through dirty tricks, so when the population revolted against the monopolies in government, as anywhere else, the leaders of the uprising were quickly seized and brutally hanged. They used secret assassinations, murder, the bankrupting of opposing citizens or companies, kidnapping and rape. All the families listed are connected with the House of Guelph, senior line of the House of Este, one of the original black nobility families of Venice from which the House of Windsor and thus the present Queen of the United Kingdom, Elizabeth II, descends. Dr. John Coleman, former British intelligence officer, The Conspirator's Hierarchy, The Committee of 300.